A shocking question: who dared to eliminate a half-brother under the shield of a powerful ally, only to spark a cascade of retaliation that could reshape an entire region? The mystery deepens as the blood-stained streets of Kuala Lumpur echo the faint perfume of fear, while distant radar stations tremble with the thrum of impending missiles. Earlier, we learned that Kim Jong-nam, once hidden in Beijing under Chinese security, vanished in Malaysia without that protection. North Korean operatives, apparently acting on Kim Jong-un's orders, carried out the assassination. China, shocked by the murder and outraged by the day-before missile launch, responded forcefully. Within a week, Beijing ordered Pyongyang to halt coal shipments, a move echoing a recent UN resolution. At the time, Chinese imports made up roughly 40% of North Korea's coal export revenue, so the ban threatened to drain the regime's hard currency lifeline. Pyongyang's fury erupted. Within days, North Korea accused China of dancing to a foreign beat, a public rebuke it had never dared utter before. The accusation fell flat. China did not lift the embargo. Instead, Kim's regime escalated, firing 5 long-range Scud missiles toward Japan in early March. One failed, but 4 struck the Japanese exclusive economic zone, claimed as a drill against U.S. bases. The U.S. and South Korea had just begun their annual FA Eagle exercises, and the missiles roared from a remote satellite site in northwest North Korea, aimed at a specific U.S. airfield. Why target Japan instead of the United States? Why launch from that isolated ridge rather than the coast? The unanswered questions hung like a heavy fog over the peninsula. A new twist looms, as the missiles arc toward distant horizons. Can China's patience survive the relentless barrage, or will a hidden hand finally pull the trigger that shatters the fragile balance? The next move could ignite a firestorm none of the powers involved are prepared to face. Previously we asked why North Korea ignored longer-range Scud missiles from its east coast during the F-Eagle drills. Did Pyongyang secretly aim its rockets straight at Beijing? The launch sites in the northwest sent missiles that could sweep across most of China, Beijing, Shanghai, and half the nation's biggest cities. The threat loomed like a cold wind after a storm, rattling radar screens and setting off a low, metallic hum in the air. China had already placed 2 over-the-horizon radars, mirrors of the third system on the Korean peninsula, to watch any fire that might strike toward its borders. HQ-19 missile defense batteries dotted the Shandong coast, ready to snap a missile in half. At that moment, no other nation could have fired such weapons into northeast China and forced a defensive wall of that scale. From late March to early April, Pyongyang tried 4 more ballistic shots, each failing with a blinding flash that embarrassed Kim Jong-un. Beijing's voice grew louder, urging Pyongyang to halt the launches. Yet the North stood defiant, its missiles still glowing on the horizon. Cliffhanger: what would happen when a nation that once stood shoulder to shoulder finally draws its sword against its old partner? The last segment revealed how the missiles could blanket China and how Beijing's radar net snapped into action. Could China really turn its army against its oldest ally? By mid-April, the Chinese leadership, weary of relentless nuclear bluffs, warned that the People's Liberation Army would strike DPRK nuclear sites on its own if Pyongyang continued to destabilize the region. The threat hung in the air like ash after a fire, heavy and unyielding. In early May, North Korea struck back, publishing a scathing commentary that accused Beijing of betrayal and insincerity. The Chinese regime must bear the heavy consequences of this reckless act, the Pyongyang statement read, echoing through corridors of power with a cold, metallic clang. Chinese military analysts replied that the Mutual Defense Pact did not obligate them to shield a nuclear program that defied regional stability. The back and forth grew louder, each side tasting the bitterness of mistrust. As missiles continued to sputter and fail, the world watched a fragile alliance crack under the weight of ambition and fear. Cliffhanger: will Beijing finally pull the trigger on its own troops, or will Pyongyang's defiance force a new, unpredictable balance in Northeast Asia? As tensions in the Pacific escalate, Mr. Xi is deeply concerned about the frailty of regional stability. The intertwining issues of North Korea's missile ambitions and Taiwan's precarious position create a volatile mix. In this high-stakes context, a single misstep could shatter the delicate balance, a light breeze could ignite a storm. In the shadows of worldwide scrutiny, North Korea relentlessly pushes boundaries. With each missile launch, Kim Jong-un dares his rivals, challenging perceptions of power. The global stage watches in anticipation, holding its breath as alliances shift and relationships fray. Imagine the deafening roar of a missile launch slicing through the stillness of a tense night. The air thickens with the scent of uncertainty, an electrifying charge before chaos erupts. Amidst this tension, many wonder, will Mr. Xi allow Kim's provocations to draw China into the fray? The stakes could not be higher, as threats loom over both nations, leaving them teetering on the edge of conflict. With Taiwan on the brink, Xi's determination to maintain control and protect his economic interests intensifies. Ironically, as Kim flexes his military muscle, his actions may inadvertently push China away, leading to isolation rather than strength. Behind closed doors, China contemplates its next move, weighing the value of its longtime ally against the growing distrust. The world watches, waiting for that one moment, a small mizcal. What if two neighbors, bound by a promise of mutual defense, could turn on each other faster than a lightning flash? Imagine Mao declaring China and North Korea inseparable as lips and teeth, while hidden doubts simmer beneath the surface, ready to erupt into a storm that could reshape an entire continent. The alliance began with a treaty that still glows on paper. In the Korean War, massive Chinese formations crossed the border, raining fire and thunder on the battlefield. 500,000 soldiers fell or were maimed, among them Mao's own son, a future leader snatched away. The blood-stained pact seemed unbreakable, yet a silent tension lingered, waiting for the next spark. Having traced the historic bond, we now see the cracks forming. Why would Beijing refuse the very weapons that could keep its ally alive, even as the world watches nuclear shadows lengthen? China kept its doors shut on North Korean nuclear ambitions, fearing that unchecked aggression would ignite a peninsula-wide war, spilling smoke into Chinese cities. It backed limited UN sanctions, a cautious nod to global pressure, while secretly fearing a missile aimed at its own borders. The restraint sparked resentment, a whisper that would soon become a roar. After the nuclear hesitance, betrayal struck in 2013. Did a single execution unleash a rumor that Japan is a century-old foe, while China has been an adversary for a millennium? Kim Jong-un ordered the death of his uncle, the key liaison with Beijing, shattering trust in a single night. Rumors spread like wildfire, Japan is our enemy of 100 years, China of 1,000. Both powers muttered the truth behind polite smiles, each aware that the other's patience was wearing thin. The simmering anger hinted at a clash that could erupt without warning. When a rogue missile rose into the sky in 2017, could it have been a silent message aimed directly at Beijing? Kim's New Year speech threatened an intercontinental ballistic launch, a provocation that made the world's pulse quicken. The United States dismissed it, perhaps exactly what Pyongyang desired. Behind the scenes, China pleaded with Washington to stay calm, urging restraint while watching missile trails glitter over the horizon. Days later, the murder of Kim Jong-nam in Malaysia shocked the regime, and Beijing responded with a sharp cut of coal imports, choking North Korea's hard currency. Pyongyang shot back, accusing China of dancing to a foreign beat, then launched Scuds toward Japan, their paths arching over the sea like warning arcs. As missiles streaked, Chinese radars lit up, and the PLA hinted at a possible strike on hidden nuclear sites if the provocations persisted. What will happen when the fragile peace finally snaps, and the two old allies stand face to face on the brink of open conflict? In recent times, tensions have escalated in the Pacific, with anxiety swirling like storm clouds on the horizon. A single misstep could shatter the fragile equilibrium that currently exists in the region. Imagine the weight of unspoken fears, the glances exchanged in dimly lit rooms, and the echoing sounds of distant military exercises. Every action taken by nations like China and North Korea reverberates far beyond their borders, influencing global dynamics. As China tightens its grip on Taiwan, it finds itself in a precarious position. The stakes are high, and the world watches closely, heartbeats quickening with the prospect of conflict. The atmosphere thickens with unvoiced terror, as leaders deliberate over their next strategic moves. Will they be able to maintain their balance, or will a careless provocation set off a chain reaction? It's clear that tensions simmer beneath the surface, with China seeking to solidify its dominance while North Korea barrels ahead with its weapon development. Amid this backdrop, Kim Jong-un's aggressive posturing threatens to draw on the United States and disrupt the delicate balance of power. How long can these nations tread this path without slipping into chaos? Indeed, in this complex web of alliances and hostilities, the implications of a single missile launch become monumental. Picture the piercing blare of alarms, the rush of military jets cutting through the sky, and the heady scent of uncertainty looming over all sides. Previously we explored why North Korea avoided launching longer-range Scud missiles from its east coast during the F-Eagle exercises. Did Pyongyang secretly aim its rockets straight at Beijing? A cold wind swept over the Korean peninsula as Pyongyang fired from hidden sites in the northwest. The missiles arced toward a horizon that could blanket most of China, Beijing, Shanghai, half the nation's major cities. Radar screens flickered, emitting a metallic hum that vibrated the air like distant thunder. China had already positioned two over-the-horizon radars, twins of the system watching the Korean peninsula, to catch any fire hurtling toward its borders. HQ-19 missile defense batteries dotted the Shandong coast, ready to snap a missile in half. At that moment, no other nation could have launched such weapons into northeast China and forced a defensive wall of that scale. From late March to early April, Pyongyang attempted 4 more ballistic shots, each burst in a blinding flash, leaving Kim Jong-un humiliated. Beijing's voice grew louder, urging Pyongyang to cease the launches. Yet the North stood defiant, its missiles still glowing on the horizon. What happens when a longtime ally finally draws a sword against its old partner? The previous segment revealed how the missiles could blanket China and how Beijing's radar net snapped into action. Could China really turn its army against its oldest companion? By mid-April, the Chinese leadership, weary of relentless nuclear bluffs, warned that the People's Liberation Army would strike DPRK nuclear sites on its own if Pyongyang continued to destabilize the region. The threat hung in the air like ash after a fire, heavy, unyielding. In early May, North Korea struck back, publishing a scathing commentary that accused Beijing of betrayal and insincerity. The Chinese regime must bear the heavy consequences of this reckless act, the Pyongyang statement declared, echoing through corridors of power with a cold, metallic clang. Chinese military analysts replied that the Mutual Defense Pact did not obligate them to shield a nuclear program that jeopardized regional stability. The back-and-forth grew louder, each side tasting the bitterness of mistrust. As missiles sputtered and failed, the world watched a fragile alliance crack under the weight of ambition and fear. Will Beijing finally unleash its own troops, or will Pyongyang's defiance force a new, unpredictable balance in Northeast Asia? The answer lingered like the scent of smoke over a battlefield, unresolved and ominous. What if two nations, bound by an ancient treaty, could turn against each other in the blink of an eye? Picture Mao Zedong proclaiming the unbreakable ties between China and North Korea, comparing them to lips and teeth while hidden doubts simmer beneath the surface, ready to ignite chaos that might shake an entire continent. This alliance, founded on blood during the Korean War, saw vast Chinese forces pour into action, leaving 500,000 soldiers either captured or killed, among them, Mao's own son, a potential successor torn away from history. But those days of unity are haunted by unspoken tension. Despite a history of cooperation, China has repeatedly cooled its support for North Korea's nuclear ambitions. Why would they deny assistance to an ally teetering on the brink of destabilization? The response lies deep within Beijing's fears. An uncontrollable North Korea, armed with nuclear weapons, could lead to devastation not just on its borders but across China itself. Meanwhile, limited UN sanctions reflected a cautious stance, an attempt to balance global pressure with domestic concerns about falling victim to a North Korean missile. Resentment brewed like a storm, and in 2013, betrayal struck. Kim Jong-un executed his uncle, the very link to Beijing, shattering any remnants of trust overnight. What ensued was a whisper-turned-roar, with rumors swirling about Japan being a foe for 100 years and China standing as an adversary for 1,000. Both nations, cloaked in civility, were acutely aware that their patience was waning, hinting at a potential explosive confrontation that lurked ominously. In January of 2017, as Kim's ominous threats of missile launches darkened the horizon, could this have been a veiled message aimed at China? The United States' dismissive response might have played right into Pyongyang's hands. Behind the scenes, China was desperately asking Washington to hold back, hoping to diffuse tensions while watching the skies streaked with missile trails. Then came a jolt, a shocking assassination that rocked the regime when Kim Jong-nam was killed in Malaysia. This act forced Beijing's hand, resulting in a severe reduction of coal imports from the north, cutting off vital resources and pinching North Korea's finances. Angered and emboldened, Pyongyang retaliated with accusations that China was bowing to external pressures and launched Scud missiles towards Japan, tracing arcs across the sea, serving as menacing reminders of their capabilities. As missiles pierced the air, Chinese radars sprang to life, and murmurs within the People's Liberation Army hinted at the possibility of striking North Korean nuclear facilities if provoked further. What happens when the teetering balance finally tips? When the long-standing allies face each other, mayhem approaches, and the world holds its breath, waiting for the impending detonation of conflict. Are we on the brink of an unprecedented confrontation?